If she doesn't truly respect you, she will never genuinely desire you. She might laugh at your jokes, reply to your texts, even sleep with you. But without sensing that unbreakable strength behind your eyes, she will always drift away in the end. That's exactly why so many men pour everything in and still get abandoned. You give love, attention, gifts, and you end up ghosted without a trace. You think you're doing the right thing, yet deep down, something feels off. And that's precisely what this video is going to fix permanently. On the Relationship Psychology channel, we cut straight to the truth. Drop "I am unbreakable" in the comments if you're ready to finally step into the version of yourself you were always meant to become. You no longer get rattled by her shifting moods. The modern world punishes stillness and rewards reaction, especially when it comes to the unpredictable, often erratic mood swings of someone who was never taught to regulate her emotions or own her behavior. If you're being brutally honest, you've been trapped in this exact cycle more than once. She says she needs space, you panic and chase. She pulls back emotionally, you over-explain and apologize endlessly. She turns cold, you heat up trying to win her back. She throws an emotional tantrum, you dive in, convinced your love will fix everything. But it never works because you're not dealing with logic. You're facing constant emotional tests that aren't designed to be passed, but to see whether you'll betray yourself just to win her approval. Every time you overreact, justify, or abandon your frame, you sacrifice another piece of your dignity. And the worst part? You feel it. You lie awake after arguments, feeling smaller. You replay old messages hunting for clues. You watch her treat you colder than she ever treated the guy who gave half your effort. And you keep telling yourself it's just a phase, she's tired, she just needs to feel safe. But deep inside, it's eroding your self-worth because you're acting like a man who needs her to feel good in order to feel good himself. As long as you keep doing this, her reactions will control you instead of your own vision. The real issue isn't just her. It's that you've built your inner peace on someone whose emotions rest on quicksand. The only way to take back control of your life is to become a man who moves according to principles, not moods. You become the anchor instead of the sail, the rock instead of the reed that bends with every gust. That doesn't mean turning cold or distant. It means refusing to adjust your behavior every time she has a bad day. When she withdraws affection to test your reaction, you don't chase and you don't overgive. You stay locked on your mission. When she throws attitude or sarcasm to provoke you, you refuse to play. You withdraw calmly, not to punish her, but because your peace is non-negotiable. Slowly, she begins to change. Not because you forced her, but because she realizes she cannot shake you. That realization either pulls her in deeper or exposes exactly who she really is. Either way, you win, because your self-respect no longer rides on her daily mood. It's rooted in the man you've become, someone who handles his emotions privately and never performs them. A man who breathes before responding, observes before speaking, pauses before committing. When she sees you don't cave to every provocation, that you don't fix what's her responsibility to fix, that you don't panic to save the vibe, that you stay grounded whether she's warm or dismissive, that her moods don't dictate your mission, your schedule, or your self-worth, she submits to the peace you've built. Either she self-destructs trying to rattle you, or she aligns. Both outcomes set you free. You finally choose your mental health over a fragile connection, your standards over her mixed signals, your purpose over her repeating patterns. This quiet but powerful transformation begins the moment you stop internalizing her chaos and realize that real emotional discipline isn't suppressing feelings, it's mastering your response. Now, instead of explaining, you let your actions speak. Instead of chasing harmony, you maintain alignment. Instead of managing her emotions, you manage your focus. If she comes with calm, she's welcome. If she brings chaos, you don't feed it. Not out of hardness or heartlessness, but because you finally learned that feeding dysfunction isn't loyalty, it's weakness. In your stillness, you reclaim everything your reactions once cost you: your time, your energy, your direction, and above all, your respect. Women don't test to hurt, they test to feel safe. When you finally stop bending to pass the test, you pass it effortlessly, not by being perfect, but by being unbreakable. You start walking differently, speaking differently, not because you're pretending to be someone else, but because you've released the need to be loved, validated, understood. By letting go, you become undeniable. When her moods no longer move you, she's forced to rise to your level or lose access to you. Both are victories. Once you stop using her moods as your compass and start living by solid principles, you unlock a level of peace most men will never taste. You no longer over-explain yourself. Years of trying to be understood slowly drained your strength, your energy, your dignity. Every time you explain to someone who's already decided not to listen, you hand them a weapon against your own peace. What you didn't see in the moment is that this habit of over-explaining doesn't come from logic, it comes from fear. Fear that if they don't understand you, they'll leave. Fear that if you don't clarify your intentions, you'll be misjudged. That fear turned you into a man who argues for his own worth, defends decisions that need no defense, lays his truth open like a book hoping someone else will see value in it before he does. The harsh truth? The more you explain, the more you look like you're asking for permission. When you justify your boundaries, your standards, your choices, what you're really saying is, I'm not sure I deserve to hold this line unless you approve. That's not strength. It's weakness dressed up as politeness. Women spot it instantly. They feel the hesitation, the overthinking, the underlying anxiety whispering, please don't get mad at me. And it kills their respect without a single word. Because no one respects a man who needs to be understood more than he needs to be rooted. If you constantly feel the urge to clarify, soften, make sure she doesn't misread your silence, your withdrawal, your decision, then what you're really admitting is that her perception of you matters more than your peace. It shows not just in your words, but in your movements, your hesitations, the follow-up texts, just checking you saw that, the backtracking after saying something real, the walking on eggshells to keep the vibe alive. The solution isn't to get colder or cruel, it's to get decisive. Start trusting your inner compass more than her reaction, say it once and live like you mean it. Drop the need for verbal validation and let your actions carry the message you no longer explain. When she questions, why didn't you reply faster? Why are you acting distant? You don't launch into an emotional monologue about your day or your feelings. You stay short, calm, clear. You've learned that true clarity doesn't need a speech, it needs alignment. The more you explain the obvious, the more confused you appear. So you focus on consistency instead of her comfort. When she pushes back, accuses, mocks, or turns your silence into guilt, you stay silent. Not to win, but because your life has already said everything that needs saying. That shift makes her reflect, then submit emotionally. There's something deeply magnetic about a man who doesn't argue, doesn't plead, doesn't repeat himself for someone who doesn't value his peace. You notice it in how she responds to your calm. She becomes more careful with her words, more measured in her tone, because suddenly she no longer has free access to your emotional energy. That void forces her to adjust, not because you demanded it, but because you detached from the need to justify your worth. The woman who used to drain you with arguments now tiptoes around your clarity. Not because you control her, but because she knows you're no longer available for conversations that compromise your dignity. You become the man who doesn't over-explain, not because he's hiding something, but because he no longer needs to be seen to know who he is. Every decision made from this new place of inner certainty adds to your presence. Your no lands without justification. Your withdrawal feels intentional. Your disagreement stays firm, yet calm. She feels it. She hears it. You realize a man who speaks less but lives more always commands greater respect than the one who argues to be loved. You stop explaining. You start embodying. Suddenly your words carry real weight, not because they're louder or longer, but because they're rare. When she finally understands that your silence isn't confusion or apathy, but pure clarity, the real change happens, not first in her, but in you. You're freed from the addiction to being understood, and that's when you become untouchable. Say no without fear. There's a reason you still hesitate when the moment calls for a direct refusal. You've been conditioned to believe rejection equals cruelty, that turning down a request makes you less caring, less lovable, less of a good partner. But in that conditioning, you lost the one thing that keeps your value intact, your spine. Every time you say yes when everything inside screams no, you lie to yourself. And worse, you let her watch you lie. She sees not just the words, but the energy behind them, the guilt in your tone, the conflict in your eyes, the way you soften your truth just to keep a temporary connection alive. That's where her respect dies, slowly, quietly, invisibly. You don't notice until it's too late, when she's emotionally cold, physically distant, mentally gone, and you're left wondering how you ended up in yet another one-sided dynamic where your needs are optional and her preferences are law. The answer is simple. Your fear of being disliked turned you into a man who trades self-respect for fleeting peace. That peace never lasts, because when you compromise to avoid rejection, you only invite deeper rejection later, not for who you are, but for the man with collapsible boundaries you've shown her. You've done it more than once, said yes to things that drained you, given time when you were exhausted, forgiven before it was earned, said okay while everything inside screamed no. You thought being nice would earn love. It earned resentment, hers and yours. The way out is to start saying no from a place of peace. No anger, no apologies, no long explanations, just a clear refusal that reflects what you stand for. It begins with the small things. She changes plans last minute, you politely decline. She tries to drag you into a fight, you walk away without a word. She tests your boundaries by pretending not to understand them. You hold the line without emotion. You finally realize saying no isn't confrontation, it's calibration. It's how you teach the world, including her, how to treat you. Once you master it, something powerful happens. She starts respecting your time more, starts asking instead of assuming, starts checking before raising her voice. Not because you told her to, but because your no now carries weight, consequences, no room for negotiation. You shift from option to standard. People only test what they believe is flexible. The moment she sees your boundaries are iron, she either adapts or leaves. Both bring you clarity. Too many men stay trapped in exhausting relationships because they train their partner that their no can be debated, softened, reversed. You stop that now. You say no to anything that doesn't align with your priorities, your peace, your growth, and you say it without raising your voice or bitterness. True power doesn't need to shout, it simply withdraws. The beauty of this change? You can now say yes with total integrity, not from pressure, but from truth. When your no is clear, your yes becomes sacred. She feels the difference. When you say yes, you mean it. That yes holds more weight than 100 spineless affirmations. This new version of you doesn't lose people, it filters them. You stop chasing validation, you own your direction. From that space, you build relationships rooted in mutual respect, not silent resentment. It all starts the day you stop fearing rejection and start honoring your own alignment. You don't owe anyone access to your energy just because they ask. The sooner you live that, the sooner you become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you've mastered the courage to say no as a standard. Stop trying to impress her. The second you start trying to impress her is the second you lose yourself. Whether you realize it or not, that effort to shine, exaggerate, perform is rooted in the belief that who you are right now isn't enough. The moment you accept that belief, you communicate it to her unconsciously, not through words, but through tone, body language, energy. She feels it when you laugh too hard at your own jokes, when you casually drop your job title unasked, when you subtly mention future plans just to seem ambitious, when you dress not to reflect your values but to match what you think she likes, when you pretend to care about that podcast or show she's obsessed with when deep down you couldn't care less. Every attempt pushes her further away. You become predictable, readable, easy to influence, therefore forgettable. The real tragedy? You're not doing it to be fake. You're doing it because no one ever told you that the man who stands still, who doesn't need to perform, who lets the world see him exactly as he is without shrinking or inflating, that man commands genuine attention, not because he tries, but because he doesn't have to. If you're honest, you've been caught in this loop more than once, improving yourself not for your own growth, but for her validation, hoping that showing her the best version will make her choose you. In doing so, you stop living for yourself and start managing your image like a PR campaign, always calculating how you're perceived, always watching her face for a reaction, always adjusting who you are based on what you think she wants. That's not confidence. It's insecurity disguised as effort. It's exhausting. It's humiliating. You walk away from those interactions feeling small, like you performed well but still weren't picked. And the worst part? You think the fix is to try harder, impress more, drop a cooler line next time. The truth is, the fix is to stop completely. Stop building your self-image around her attention and start building your reality around your own mission, your own tastes, your own life. The man who no longer needs to be loved becomes magnetic. This shift doesn't require arrogance or disdain. It requires coming back to yourself, playing the music you actually like even if she doesn't, wearing what feels right even if it's not on trend, speaking straight without filtering every sentence through, will this sound cool? That calm, unbreakable energy, she feels it deep down. You're no longer there to conquer her, you're there to live your life, and she can choose to join or not. That's when everything flips. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped selling it. She leans in, asks more questions, watches you differently. If she doesn't, it doesn't faze you, because your worth no longer rests on her reaction. It rests on your reality, your routine, your standards, how you carry yourself when no one's watching. Too many men waste all their energy looking impressive on the outside, while their inner world stays neglected, unstructured, directionless. If you truly want to be the man people remember, the one women gravitate toward, the one fathers respect, stop performing and start producing. Results in your life, your work, your discipline. Let that speak. When your actions align with your identity, and that identity no longer depends on external approval, you become undeniable. At that point, the right woman will be impressed not by what you say, but by everything you don't need to say. Not by what you show, but by what you've already built. Not by a perfect performance, but by the raw power of your presence without any performance at all. From that moment on, you don't chase attraction anymore. You command it.